The top stories in Scotland today.
Death of a legend. Tributes to Jimmy Johnstone after Celtic's greatest ever player loses his battle for life.
Also tonight,
Have been paid to Celtic and Scotland great Jimmy Johnstone, who died today at the age of 61. He was one of the most gifted footballers of his generation and fought a brave 5-year battle against motor neuron disease.
Well, Jinky, as he was affectionately known, was one of Celtic's Lisbon Lions, the first British team to win the European Cup. Always a favourite with supporters, he was voted the greatest ever player by fans. Well, Scotland Today's Mike Edwards is live for us at Celtic Park. Mike.
It's been a cold, wet and miserable day all day here in the east end of Glasgow, but that hasn't deterred thousands of people from turning up here to pay tribute to Jimmy Johnstone. Let's have a look at some of them and their tributes now. They've been here laying tops, flags, scarves, flowers and other tributes to a footballing great, but not just to a footballing great. I think people were also here to pay tribute to a man who was a very human man. We will hear shortly about his battle with alcoholism and his impromptu boat trip down the Clyde at Largs in 1974, and also about motor neuron disease, which took his life tragically early. From early this morning, they came to pay tribute. Fans of all ages, supporters of many clubs, including Celtic's rivals across the city. They remembered the man, the player and the legend.
Jimmy was the kind of player that got people's backsides off the seats. Whenever he got the ball, something spectacular was likely to happen, and often did. But not just that, I mean, you know, he had this incredible skill. People think it was just something that came easy to him. It wasn't, he worked very hard at it.
I would give him the ball, go in the overlap, and the overlap's perhaps a bit too long, a bit too far, so I'm maybe 20 yards ahead of Jimmy. And come back infuriated because I didn't get the ball from me, Jimmy. Jog back and look at me, Jimmy. He just looked at me with that little Jimmy Johnstone smirk and shrug his shoulders as if to say, not this time, Danny.
In later years, Celtic fans had a new hero, but they voted Johnstone the greatest ever Celtic player. Today, Henrik Larsson said that when he joined the club, he didn't know what it meant to wear the number 7. But by the time he'd left Celtic, he realised it was Jinky who'd made it so special. Today's Celtic manager, another former teammate from their Dundee days, recalls a Celtic great.
He was an incredible man. He was incredibly brave on the football field. But and then over the last couple of years, because it's easy to be brave in the football field, it's physically brave, but to be mentally brave that he is, and to be brave for the people round about him was phenomenal.
Many believe Jimmy Johnstone bridged the gap with rivals Rangers. He had a special friendship with Jim Baxter and, like the Rangers star, had a battle with the bottle. Opponents of the day remember a special talent.
Really, when Jimmy was really on his game, he was nearly unplayable. He had this fantastic ability to come at you and keep the ball very close and then drop his shoulder and jink away, and that's how he got his nickname.
5 years ago, Jimmy Johnstone was diagnosed with the debilitating condition motor neuron disease. Friends say he never complained and fought the illness to the end, raising funds and awareness.
He let his name be used for research, and because Jimmy sincerely believed that there was a cure out there, and he didn't just do it sort of willy-nilly. He thought hard about what was wrong. He knew the consequences.
In the boardroom at Celtic Park, there is a display cabinet containing the 9 consecutive league medals he won under Jock Stein. Alongside are the medal and trophy, which made him a Lisbon Lion and the greatest player ever to wear the hoops. Well, when I arrived here early this morning, there were a few flowers. Now, look at it, it's very nearly a shrine. Let's have a look at more closely at some of the tributes. At the front door, we heard Sandy Jardine talk about how Jinky used to drop his shoulder and then cut inside or outside a fullback. There's an oil painting which shows that, I think, in some excellent detail. There's also candles and other floral tributes around that oil painting. There's also a retro shirt which says, Jinky, say hello to Big Jock, Bobby and Ronnie. That's references to Bobby Murdoch and Ronnie Simpson, 2 Lisbon Lions, and their manager Jock Stein, all of whom sadly no longer with us. And finally, one of many Rangers supporters' tributes. To Jinky, you broke our hearts on many an Old Firm day, but if truth be told, it was a joy to watch you play. There's also references to Davy Cooper and George Best, sadly also no longer with us, and to Jim Baxter, sadly again no longer with us, and a man with whom Jimmy Johnstone had a special friendship. More, of course, on Jimmy Johnstone later in the programme, but in the meantime, live from Celtic Park in Glasgow, back now to you in the studio.
Thanks very much, Mike. 10 years ago, Jane.
Thanks, Sarah. It's been a sad day as we've been hearing. Tributes have been flowing in for Celtic legend Jimmy Johnstone, who died today at the age of 61. Memories from Neil Lennon in a moment, but first, Raman Bardwaj reflects on the life of Celtic's greatest ever player.
This is Jimmy Johnstone for Celtic. The other, of course, is Woolley for Rangers.
In the world of football, language can become corrupted by exaggeration. Overstatement promotes talents which are merely mediocre. It's impossible, though, to overstate the extent of Jimmy Johnstone's abilities. Words like world-class and legend fail to properly convey a very individual sort of genius.
Mudden on to Hughes. The ball headed in, a glorious goal! Oh, excellently taken by Jimmy Johnstone.
To be honest, I was never ever thinking about making the grade and making that my life. It happened. I had just a love of playing football.
James Connolly Johnstone was born in View Park, Lanarkshire on the 30th of September 1944. He became involved with Celtic in 1958 as a ball boy, made his first team debut against Kilmarnock in 1963 and was a mainstay in the greatest Scottish side of all time.
Billy McNeill and his magnificent men earned the thanks and admiration of their native Glasgow, Scotland and the whole United Kingdom.
If Lisbon in 1967 was the pinnacle, there were other memorable performances under Jock Stein. The 5-1 win against Red Star Belgrade in 1969. His 2 goals at Ibrox in 1967 gave Celtic the championship. He was the man of the match as Celtic beat Real Madrid in Alfredo Di Stefano testimonial at the Bernabeu in the same year. In the European Cup semi-final in 1974, he was kicked off the park by a cynical Atletico Madrid.
Of the field at the moment. Johnstone with Diaz. Johnstone brought down, and that's Benegas, number 4. Johnstone.
Johnstone played over 500 times for Celtic, scoring 129 goals. He won 9 league championship, 4 Scottish Cup, 5 League Cup and 1 European Cup medal. But he won only 23 international caps. His Scotland career was marked by episodes of high jinks, like the time before the 1974 World Cup finals in Germany, when he disappeared in a boat off Largs.
Me and Sandy were coming up to a walk along the beach and the boats were sitting. And I thought, we had a few jars, you know, and we were talking all the time, talking about Rangers Celtic games and such. I says, you fancy a wee clear ahead? In the boats, 3 or 4 of them sitting. He says, aye, certainly.
Jock Stein thought him a most troublesome, if brilliant player. Indeed, he regarded it as one of his greatest achievements as Celtic manager that he kept Johnstone in the game for as long as he did.
Put him in the shade a wee bit,
After football, Jinky, like so many from his home county, lived a modest life, doing mostly labouring jobs while successfully winning a battle against heavy drinking. Then in 2001, he was struck by motor neuron disease, the illness that was to kill him. The memory of the flame-haired boy, twisting and turning, weaving and jinking, will never be lost on those who watched him. The sheer enthusiasm of his personality and the uniqueness of his talent guaranteed that he would transcend the vindictive rivalries of Glasgow football. Johnstone would be celebrated by everyone who loved the beautiful game.
Well, Celtic current captain Neil Lennon has been paying tribute to Jinky today. He says he inspired the present Parkhead dressing room.
It's a huge loss. We've lost a talismanic figure, cult hero, not just for the 60s and 70s, but for the last 40 years. We come in every now and again to the dressing room, and he always had a good word to say about players and about the team, and he was always very, very encouraging to a lot of the younger boys as well. When you think of Jimmy, a smile automatically comes on your face because of the player he was and the personality he was as well.
Neil Lennon and his memories there of Jinky. Well, Lennon led his Celtic team to a hard-fought win at